By its very nature, one of the most famous elements of horror is the big whodunit reveal. And we've actually released a list celebrating this trope before, but with so many options to choose from, it only made sense to give it a little bit more love. With that in mind then, I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 more most shocking horror movie unmaskings. Number 10, Andy Richards' Sorority Row. A loose do-over of 1982's The House on Sorority Row, Stuart Hendler's Sorority Row is likely way better than it had any right to be. Giving a fresh lick of paint to an old favourite often tends to not work out all that well. Yet this 2009 movie brings plenty of inventive, brutal deaths to the table. As far as a fun, easy-to-watch modern slasher, Sorority Row stands out as a decent addition to the subgenre. When a prank spectacularly backfires, a college girl ends up dead, and her fraternity sisters decide to hide the body down a mineshaft, as you do. When said sisters start to get bombarded by spooky text messages 8 months later though, the hunt is on to find out who knows the group's dirty little secret. Of course, this mystery all plays out as a masked murderer goes on a college campus killing spree. As Sorority Row serves up a flame-laced finale, the deranged executioner of the piece is revealed to be Julian Morris's Andy Richards. The boyfriend of sorority sister Cassidy, Andy's motive is that he had to kill all who knew the film's big secret in order for he and Cassidy to have a future together. It's pretty skewed logic, but hey, that's what makes this fella a smidge unstable. What makes the unmasking particularly shocking though, is that Andy is positioned as one of the few nice, caring, considerate characters of a film full of mostly unlikable people. Number 9, Alex Hammond, Prom Night. If Carrie and Halloween had a disco-infused, mildly dull baby, it would undoubtedly be named Prom Night. Dubbed a cult classic in some quarters, the reality is Paul Lynch's 1980 picture is a snorefest with bland kills and some proper ropey performances. A little out of tune with the rest of Prom Night though, the ending provides a genuine emotional gut punch once the killer of the film has their mask removed. For those not familiar with this slasher affair, Prom Night begins with the accidental death of 10-year-old Robin Hammond. Mocked by 4 older classmates when she turns up at an abandoned convent, Robin ends up falling to her death. From there, the movie jumps forward 6 years as said classmates and Robin's older sister Kim are getting ready to attend their prom as dead bodies begin to pile up. Throughout this film, it's teased that the balaclava-clad killer is either an escaped sex offender who was falsely blamed for Robin's death, or that it's Robin's own father, who also happens to be the school principal and is played by Leslie Nielsen. Yes, that Leslie Nielsen. With the action of Prom Night concluding on, well, Prom Night, the feature's big unmasking shows the killer to actually be Robin's twin brother Alex. For a bang-average slasher, it's a massively poignant moment to see an emotionally broken sibling driven to murderous vengeance for the loss of his sister all those years ago. Number 8, Reverend Bates' Nightmare Beach. Likely one of the lesser-known efforts on this list, Umberto Lenzi's Nightmare Beach is exactly the sort of run-of-the-mill slasher offering you'd expect to see from a picture released in 1988. Still, the feature does have 1 or 2 excellent kills, plus the final act reveal of the big bad's identity comes somewhat out of left field. In terms of plot, Nightmare Beach opens up by showing gruff and tough biker gang leader Diablo being offed by electric chair after being found guilty of murder. Despite proclaiming his innocence, it's not enough to save this brute as he takes his final electrifying breaths and swears revenge on anyone and everyone. Jumping ahead a year, obs during Miami's spring break season, a sinister biker starts to slaughter the generic teens who are in town to party. Believed to be the back from the dead Diablo, this murderer concocts all manner of inventive ways to kill seemingly random victims, before then turning his attention to Diablo's rival biker gangs and then his own crew. By the time the motorcycle helmet is finally removed at Nightmare Beach's close though, it's genuinely shocking to see that the person behind all of this death is Reverend Bates. The reason for such bloodshed? Well, as ever, the Reverend was on a mission to murder those deemed sinners in his eyes. Number 7, Jill Roberts' Scream 4. While the Scream franchise is one brimming with shock reveals where it pertains to its killers, those movies don't actually feature all that many actual unmaskings. For example, there is no mask removal when audiences find out about Scream's Billy and Stu, Scream 2's Mrs. Loomis, Scream 4's Charlie, or Amber and Sam of this year's Scream being under the Ghostface getup. Even when looking at the reveal of Roman Bridger as Scream 3's sole villain, the plot point of Roman being Sidney Prescott's half-brother is explained in great detail before Scott Foley's character finally takes off his mask. Given how she'd been portrayed as the Sidney-like victim of so much of Scream 4 then, it was a legitimate shock upon first watch to see Emma Roberts' Jill as one of the killers of that picture. Due to Scream 4 being intended to be the launching point of a new trilogy, many wrongly presumed that Sidney would be passing the torch to Jill so that Roberts could drive the franchise forward across Scream 5 and 6. Instead, Jill's jealousy of the fame accrued by Sidney drove her to force a narrative that framed Jill as a victim who could likewise take the spotlight offered up by being at the center of such publicized horrors. To become that victim, though, Jill first had to fabricate a new Ghostface rampage. Number 6, the leader, the Purge. Referred to in the credits simply as Polite Leader, the smug prick at the front of this gang of wrong'uns had a pivotal role to play in setting the stage for James DeMonaco's The Purge. While there's currently 5 movies with a 6th in development and a now Acts 2 season TV offering to The Purge name, this original 2013 picture is what started it all. Based around a fascinating concept, it was important for The Purge to set out its stall early. And that early saw the first movie introduce the base notion of a crime-free America with minimal unemployment, where all crime is made illegal for one night of the year. From there, it's the arrival of the Polite Leader and his masked crew that really hammers home what to expect from this movie. As Ethan Hawke's James and family are shown as the audience's in to Purge night, we see a James secure his home for the evening as the family look to block out the outside world and quietly go about their own business. However, when a wounded stranger ends up being taken in by the family, that brings the Polite Leader to their door as he's on the hunt for said stranger. And once the Polite Leader removes his mask, it's then that the family are made fully aware that they either hand over this stranger or this dude and his group of bloodthirsty pals will break in and add the family to their hit list. Number 5, Man in the Mask, Dollface, and Pin-Up Girl, The Strangers. Released in 2008, Brian Bettino's The Strangers made a major impact on horror hounds when it first creeped its way to the silver screen. Full of slow burn, wince-inducing terror and delicate dread, this Because You Were Home invasion picture centers on 3 masked killers who like to cause chaos and carnage on a random basis and purely for the and giggles. Unfortunately for troubled couple Kristen and James, it's their remote summer home that ends up hearing an ominous knock on its door. And before you know it, the duo are sinisterly tormented by Man in the Mask, Dollface, and Pin-Up Girl. Tied up and at the mercy of their attackers, our central protagonists realize their goose is cooked once these lunatics reveal their faces. And in a genius move, you barely get a glimpse of what their faces actually look like. And that's what makes this unmasking so chilling. Much like in The Purge, this particular unmasking means that the 2 characters know they're done for. As soon as the masks are off, the cat and mouse game is over, and the troupe immediately stab the duo. Number 4, Roy Burns, Friday the 13th, A New Beginning. Having been hacked to pieces by young Tommy Jarvis at the end of 1984's Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, Jason Voorhees was supposedly dead by the time 1985's Friday the 13th, A New Beginning picked up the action 7 years after the events of that movie. So when a hockey mask-adorned hulking killer starts offing teens at the Pinehurst halfway house near Camp Crystal Lake, the big question is whether or not Jason is back from the dead, or whether the erratic, damaged Tommy is actually responsible for these murders. Well, by the end of the final chapter, it would be detailed that neither Jason nor Tommy were the killer here, as our deranged murderer lay dead and unmasked as the movie's 3rd act concluded. Now, this wasn't part of an elaborate reveal where the killer demasks of their own will. No, instead, it's only after Jason is thrown from a barn window onto a tractor spike that his mask happens to fall off, showing the face of some random fella rather than the gnarly visage of Jason Voorhees. That random fella, though, turned out to be Roy Burns, a paramedic briefly glimpsed right at the start of the movie. There, Roy has to collect the dead body of his son, which in turn caused Burns to parade around as a copycat Jason in order to exact some vengeance for his boy's death. Number 3, Mrs. Tredoni, Alice, Sweet Alice. Known as the mask murders in certain markets, 1976's giallo-infused slasher Alice, Sweet Alice has become something of a cult classic these days. It's also a movie that has one of the most simplistic yet eerie masks in horror history. Where that mask is concerned, though, Alice, Sweet Alice makes the rather unique move to reveal its killer with a solid 35 minutes of the movie left to go. There's no final act unmasking here, although that's not to say that the final act isn't a disturbing one. Set largely in and around a New Jersey Catholic church, this Alfred Soul offering opens up with the murder of young Karen by a figure wearing a yellow raincoat and a painted, vaguely translucent mask. As for the prime suspect of this death, it's Karen's older sister Alice, who's suggested to be behind the murder and the subsequent mysterious deaths that follow. Regardless of several people in Alice Sweet Alice believing that Alice is indeed responsible for this bloodshed, the movie barely gets past the halfway point before it reveals Mildred Clinton's Mrs. TREDONI as the person under the mask and raincoat. It's a sweet twist and it sets the stage for the carnage to come. Number 2, the murderous old woman, Don't Look Now. Not a physical unmasking per se this time around, it's more of a hoodie reveal now that I think about it. But the final reveal of Don't Look Now is the sort of slap around the chops that helps make horror so great. A bona fide classic of cinema period, Nicholas Roeg's 1973 picture is famed for its style, score, sex scene, and shocking conclusion. If, for some reason, you've never seen this iconic picture before, it revolves around Donald Sutherland and Julie Christie's John and Laura Baxter. Distraught by the death of their young daughter, the Baxters move to Venice after John is hired to fix up an old church. There, Sutherland's character begins to see the figure of Christine, all as the winding streets of Venice house several brutal murders. Adorned in the same sort of red coat that Christine was wearing at the time of her death, this mystery figure is finally hunted down by a desperate John, frantically trying to reconnect with his possibly now alive daughter. As Don't Look Now ends, though, it's revealed to John that the hooded, red coat wearing person that he thinks of as Christine is in fact a murderous dwarf who's responsible for the killings in the film. With that, the Baxter family patriarch joins the number of those slayed as this old woman fatally stabs him. Number 1, everyone, Smiley. Okay, nobody said the movies on this list had to be good, just that the unmaskings themselves had to be shocking and effective. So, with that in mind, let's move on to this entry. Pulling inspiration from chat services and online communities, with a smidge of Candyman and Bloody Mary thrown in for good measure, the core premise of Smiley is that the titular killer would emerge behind someone if the person they were speaking to online typed, and I can't believe I'm saying this, "I did it for the lulz" 3 times. At the center of this is Caitlin Gerard's Ashley, a college kid whose friends, classmates, and even her would-be love interest are all off in gory fashion by the nefarious presence of Smiley. When Ashley herself is confronted by Smiley in the film's final act, though, it's actually multiple Smileys who attack her, which in turn causes Ashley to throw herself from a balcony window to her death. The biggest shock here isn't even that there are numerous Smileys, but more so it's the fact that it's actually all of Ashley's dead friends, classmates, and would-be love interest who are under these masks. Claiming to be part of Anonymous, these loons very much did indeed do it for the lulz, as they aim to launch the Smiley craze and create copycat killers at college campuses across the country. After that, the final shots of the film actually kind of take this back and suggest that there is a real Smiley out there, and they also show that Ashley survived her purportedly fatal fall. So yeah, no one said this was a good movie, but that is a pretty good twist. So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. What did you think about these horror movie unmaskings? And are there any iconic ones I missed off here? While you're down there as well, could you please give us a like, share, subscribe, and maybe even check out the original video that we did for this subject. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.